If you have never had to take birth control, then good for you. But for the rest of us, we have had many experiences with birth control. And for me, particularly, I started taking birth control when I was about 19 years old. That was my first time trying birth control. If you're new to my channel, this is your first time here. My name is Dr. G. I'm a holistic health coach. I am a pharmacist and a public health practitioner. I have been a pharmacist for a long time, so this is somewhat of a blasphemy because it's unpopular to say anything about things like the birth control in an era where women liberation seemed to be fully tied to taking birth control. When I was about 18 years old, I had to see the doctor. I was at work and I had such an explosion, I will say, after that. But first things first. When I started my period, I was about 14 years old. I started my period at 14. And from day one, my period came with a vengeance. I would cry, I would roll on the floor, I would puke sometimes. I mean, it was bad. My period had never been easy, ever, throughout my life, as far as I could remember of those days anyway. So I was constantly in pain. I would have a week of freedom. That's what I called it, a week of freedom. And then PMS will start for at least a week. My period would last another week, and then I'll be spotting for another week. And I'll have 1 week of oh, USA, and we're back again. And this was a routine for me. So whenever I hear women talk about never having any pain with their period, I really can't relate because that was not my story. I've always had painful periods. Then when I immigrated to the United States, one of the first things you do when you come here is to find a doctor and all the good jazz. And so as a teenager, I just started college, and now I have access to most of these clinics that I didn't know anything about. And I went to the clinic, Planned Parenthood to be more particular. I went to Planned Parenthood to um, to do a pap smear. And after my pap smear, they talked to me about, my sexual health, and I shared my concerns about my painful periods, and the doctor referred me to another doctor. And so I went to see an OB, and they wrote me a prescription for birth control. And for the first maybe 2 years, I would just go to Planned Parenthood and they would give me maybe 6 months supply. And I'll come back 6 months later, they'll give me another. I never had to pay for it. And I didn't know really much about it besides the wonderful things that that did to my body, right? Which were no more painful periods. That was it. And I could manipulate my period. That was the second biggest thing for me. I'm like, oh, I have somewhere to go next week. I really don't want to be on my period. I'm just going to skip 2 pills. We probably all have done that. I don't know if you have, but that's what I was doing just to get to have my period when I want to have my period. My period was clockwork. It was no more week of pain, this week of that. So I see why women get on birth control, and I see how it can be advantageous from that angle. Sexually, I wasn't sexually active at this stage in my life, so it wasn't beneficial for me for that purpose. But it was something that helped me when I was in undergrad. And then when I got to grad school, I stopped taking birth control because multiple things happened. Besides the beautiful, no painful periods, before I got there, for the first maybe 6 months when I started the birth control, I was in a lot of pain. So they had to keep changing and changing till they found the lowest dose of hormones that wasn't making me sick. Like I was literally feeling like I was pregnant or something. I didn't know what pregnancy was, but my body was just not, I mean, my body was not my body. Let me put it that way. And I would be in a lot of pain, but I didn't know what it was. Like my tummy is hurting, my head was hurting, I'm so bloated. I have water retention. I started gaining some weight. So then the doctor would change and put me on something else. And I'll try it for another month. And the symptoms will be a little better, but they won't go away and they'll switch. I think by the third or fourth one, I got one that worked for me. And I'm not naming any of the birth controls directly because I don't want to say that this one is better than that one because I really don't know. I would say it depends on your body and how you metabolize it and absorb it and how it works for you. But in general, that is not the point of this video today. I'm letting you know how I got started on birth control. And when I got to college, grad school, I stopped taking birth controls because, again, something didn't click. Like in my mind, I just felt like this is not okay. So I stopped taking it. I've never been that girl that was worried about being pregnant. Okay, so I wasn't concerned about being pregnant. So I just stopped taking the pills. And then my skin broke out like crazy. That was the other thing. I've always had bad acne. You can still see I have some acne scars, but I'm not worried about it. But I've always had bad acne when I was younger. So the birth control also helped clear my skin to a large extent. So when I stopped, everything went haywire. My period didn't come back for at least another year. It took me a year plus before I got my period back when I stopped taking the birth control. Like I'm not taking anything, but I don't have a period. My body was just whack. Like it was just all over the place. It's just my skin. Everything was coming out of my skin. My skin looked horrendous. And so it took a couple of years. I was back. I'm more regulated. My skin was still not the greatest, but not as bad. Obviously, at this point, my body has stabilized itself to a large extent. And then, before I got married, when I got close to get married, I'm like, oh, I want to enjoy my marriage. Again, that mental story, controlling, whatever, brainwash, whatever you want to call it, was in my head. I don't want to have a baby as soon as I get married, so I'm going to get back on birth control. So I got back on birth control before I got married. And Lord, I would bleed like crazy. I would have horrible yeast infections. I had bad headaches. Like everything went. I guess there's a difference between taking birth control in your 20s versus taking birth control or in your teens versus taking birth control in your 30s. Because completely different experience. And then the worst thing I did was I said, okay, my body is just not doing this. Let me try the shot. Again, I'm not labeling any companies. Worst experience. Like I bled. I felt like my whole entire blood supply was coming out after the 3 months. I bled like crazy. And each time I go to the OB and I complain, I keep having yeast infections. I'm bleeding. I don't feel right. My brain is not right. I don't feel okay. My doctor tells me it has nothing to do with the birth control. Maybe I have something else going on with me. So we need to do other tests. So I just stopped. I stopped. This was my first year of marriage. I'm like, forget it. If I have a baby, I have a baby. I mean, I had just got married at this point, but I would take the baby over all these crazy, horrendous symptoms. And so, um, please, if you want to have a baby, I know that nobody wants to be a single mom, or, well, I wouldn't say nobody. There are a lot of single mothers by choice, but most women don't choose to be single mothers, and most women don't want to be teenage mothers. I understand why birth control was created, invented. It liberated women, it protected women, it saved women, it did all these wonderful things. But we have to, for every positive, there is got to be the other side of the coin. And I'm here to talk about the other side of the coin today. Some of the negative impacts of birth control, mind blowing impact of birth control that we don't talk about and we don't think about. For example, I mentioned, and I have some notes. So if I do look down, just know I'm looking at my notes just to make sure that I cover everything that I want to cover as far as the effect of birth control to your brain, to your mind, and to you in general, and how it affects the whole society we live in. Because we don't tend to connect the dots, but everything is connected. All is one. We've heard this many times. All is one. So, what is affecting one? It's like you saying, I'm taking Tylenol just because I have a headache. But the Tylenol is not going to just go to your head. The Tylenol is going to be absorbed in your whole entire body. So its effect is not going to be just on your head. That's just one of the effects that you get. And it's a positive effect that you want. However, it's also going to your liver and it's causing severe liver damage. So that's an effect you don't really want, right? You're not signing up for Tylenol because you want to have a liver problem. You took Tylenol because you want to help with your fever or your headache or what have you. So, same thing with societal impact of one choice that we make as a people, because we're all connected. So, one choice that is liberating women is creating so many other effects on the whole entire planet. First is the mood changes, right? Anybody that has ever been on birth control will tell you, like I said when I first started, how I felt. But your mood shifts. One of the biggest mood change has to do with, your cortisol level, your serotonin level. All of a sudden you're depressed, you have anxiety, you're sad, and you don't know why. It's your birth control. You're taking this birth control and it's making you depressed. And you don't realize that your birth control is part of why you could be depressed. You should consider just maybe taking a break. You know, like I did, take a break from the birth control and see if your mood improves. See if your anxiety gets better. Mood changes is a big, big problem with birth control use, you know? And then another major, I mean, they're all mind blowing to me, but another major effect of birth control is the numbing effect it has on you. So, stress response. Naturally, if something happens, you probably will be able to cope with life happening, because life is always lifing, as they say, right? Things are always happening. Every day you wake up, something is going down, something is happening. If you have kids like me, there's always something happening. I have a toddler. And I feel like if I just put a camera in my house, it would be a Hollywood bestseller or something. I'm all good, ready to take on the world. It would be a Hollywood bestseller. My phone is talking back. It would be a Hollywood bestseller. So there's always happenings around us. But when you are taking hormonal birth control, you have blunted response. So you have difficulty with dealing with all of the changes that are happening in the manner that you naturally will deal with it. You can't do it. You can't do it. And so the recent study that came out that got me really looking into, that's what even got me to start researching deeper into this birth control. When I read this study about attraction to your partner, so I'm not here to talk about sexual preferences and sexual orientations. However, I think birth control plays a huge role. I have no claims because I didn't do this research. Okay. But women that are on birth control find masculine men too toxic. They're not attracted to them. They don't find men that are masculine attractive. So I said, oh, this is why a lot of us keep pushing for a society of men that are more feminized. Men that are, we want them to be super sensitive. And again, that's just my opinion. We want men that are super sensitive, men that are going to sit with us and listen to us complain about our day, men that have they're more in tune with their feminine energy. And so it affects our sexual preferences. I think that's crazy that you are taking a birth control. And they did also find that it reduces testosterone because you're not so attracted to your partner. Now his testosterone level drops because you're no longer being feminine, you're more masculine. His testosterone level drops, and you have this relationship where men are not, you know, this is the first time in centuries where sex is not an issue, where people are having less sex in their relationships or at all. Singles are not bothered about being in relationships. Singles are not trying to have kids. Singles are not trying to hook up, if you will, you know, and or the hookups are not, there's no emotional attachment. Like women are in relationships where there's no emotional attachments. This has never been. I understand that we've always had sex workers, but that's not the majority of the population in any population. But this is the direction we're going today. So we have attraction to partners, which is shifting preferences from men that are more, masculine, like I said. And literally, the structure of our brain is changing. The size of our brain is changing. And our amygdala and prefrontal cortex, like your thinking part of your brain, your emotional part of your brain, your decision making part of the brain, it's no longer, it's like numb. It's numb. I've heard so many women say, when I stopped birth control, it seemed like the sun came out again. That's how they felt. Like they felt like they're covered in clouds, and all of a sudden, the world before them is now visible again. Some women have taken birth control for 20 years, for 30 years, that they don't even know who they are anymore. They have no idea who they are because they have been on this medication. They have been numbed. They have been numbed for so long that they don't know and they don't recognize themselves. They don't recognize who they are. They don't recognize who they desire or their preference for a partner. They don't recognize what they desire. Like they don't have a taste for anything because it's been so long that they've been on these pills. I can say that I took the pills maybe for about 4 years, and then I took a break, and then I tried to take it for another year, and it didn't work out. So I took the pills for maybe 5 years of my life, and I can attest to some of these effects. So I can only imagine what that would be like if you had to take the pills for 20 years, for 30 years. Women that have been taking pills since they were 14, 13. And that's another part of the study, right? This change in brain structure. When you give the pills to your teenage daughter and her brain is not fully developed yet, you cannot, like her brain will never develop normally. You cannot reverse those symptoms because the brain structure has been changed completely. Like it's one thing if your brain is fully developed, right? And then you took the pill. When you stop, you could detox, you could, make some adjustments, and you can try and heal your brain. But imagine if your brain never had a chance. Your brain never stood a chance of, so your daughter would never know her full potential. She would never discover who she was here to be because her entire brain has been changed for good. Her entire brain has changed. And so her development would be, it's like you broke a leg, right? And you didn't get a cast. And that leg ended up healing. Whatever position that bone happens to be in when it heals is the position that bone is going to be in. So you probably, and more likely than not, will be limping for the rest of your life. In fact, if you want to walk normally, they would have to go back and break the bone again, realign it, and then cast it so it would heal properly. That's what they would have to do. But what are you going to do with a child that the brain never developed properly? What are you going to do? You can't take the brain out and then put it back and hit the reset button. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. So you have invariably chosen to change the path of your daughter's life forever. And I know the thought process is, oh, um, I just don't want her to end up making the wrong choices, meeting a guy I think she should like, so what have you. Worst case scenario is putting your kids on birth control just because you want them to have beautiful skin, or just because you want them to um, just get used to having this freedom. There are so many other options, like copper is shown to be a good viable option for birth control that doesn't require hormone or doesn't have hormones, so you don't have the same negative impact, right? So you can think of that, or trying the whole monitoring your body temperature, or having apps. We have so many apps these days that can help you to monitor your period so you know when you are highly likely to conceive. Things like that can help. But more than that is, I'm of the opinion today that let's go back to the old school way of doing things. Let's try to raise daughters that are not choosing to sleep with every guy they run into because they like him, or that have self-worth and self-respect, that they don't think that that's the definition of freedom that they should choose. Liberation, with they say with power comes responsibility. So just because you're liberated doesn't mean you should abuse your liberation. Women have the freedom to be and to do so many things they've never had the freedom to do in the past, right? But does that mean that we should take that freedom lightly? Does that mean we should just, oh, hey, I like him, so who cares if I even know his name? I'm just, I feel like it, and there's no consequence to my action because I'm on birth control. Because before, in my mother and grandmother's generation, they can't just be going around sleeping with everybody, because women are the ones that get punished when they have babies. The man can still go ahead and live his life. She can't, because now she has a baby at home. She has two or three or what have you. And by the time she starts having babies with different baby daddies or fathers, she's embarrassed or what have you. So she doesn't want to do that. So women in my mom's generation got married as virgins. Like that was the standard. Is that unrealistic to expect that your daughter doesn't just sleep around, or that you don't just like I I want to do that study. Like is having multiple partners a result of self-worth or lack of it? The other thing that or some other things that this can do is affect your sleep pattern. If you've ever been pregnant, you know how it is when you have all this hormone release, it impacts your sleep. So how is your sleep on birth control versus not? How is it? They affect your quality of sleep tremendously. Whenever your period is about to come on and you start releasing all that progesterone, you can feel the difference. You're up all night thinking about all kinds of random things. And this is when whatever your friend did 3 months ago or 6 weeks ago or 2 days ago start becoming a problem, but you didn't even think about it all this time. Or, earlier this morning, your husband didn't say good morning. And now all of a sudden at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's a problem. It wasn't a problem before. So think about what that does to the quality of your rest when you have all this hormone dumped into your system and it's manipulating your thought process. I do wonder sometimes, you know, do we, um, what the projected future will look like if we continue on this trajectory, what our future is going to look like. Um, the other thing I mentioned earlier was about sexual desire. So think about it. If you're depressed, if you're moody, if you can't sleep, if you're numb, if your cortisol is blunted, if you're not even attracted to your partner, how is that going to affect your sexual desire? You know, so most times people have very low libidos, but that explains what I was saying earlier, which was the fact that testosterone levels are dropping globally, or at least nationwide. Um, any society where birth control has dominated, you would see this. Versus if you go to rural areas, even within the United States, you go to the countryside, you're going to see a difference. You go to countries, third world countries, where um, birth control has, it's just something that the elite have access to, you will see a difference. You see a difference in the quality of their relationships, and also how they interact with both or opposite genders. So now women have no libido. The men have no libido because you, as a woman, are not even releasing the hormones. Because as women, we have cycles. The cycle, the whole idea of cycle is not just about a period, right? So you have a cycle where when you start ovulating, you release hormones that now your partner, even though they're not aware in their conscious mind, subconsciously, your partner smells this hormone and it tells him she's ready and she's interested. And that brings him to you. So imagine when this hormone is blocked and is not being released. So you are not getting those messages within your body that says, I'm interested in a partner. Your partner is not getting the cues that says, my partner is interested in a partner. What does that do to both of you? What does that do? You're both just looking at each other, pissed, because no one is happy when you don't have that intimacy, right? And we're walking around in a society full of angry, like people are depressed, sad, lonely, just mad. And we wonder why some of these things are happening. And again, I say everything is connected. Please, this is not saying that birth control is the sole responsible factor here, but it plays a major role in where society is today. It does. With the introduction of birth control and the Industrial Revolution, all of them happened around the same time, and the world shifted. And today, we can't recognize this new world that we've created. Very few people are happy with the state of affairs. Very few people. Most people don't like how things are because of the fact that they are just not appropriate. You know, there's something within us that says we're social beings, we're supposed to have close, intimate relationships, but our hormones are all disrupted and it's impacting our ability to do that. And lastly, uh, we know, as I started off by talking about our mood changes and mental health problems are some of the biggest challenges we're facing today, you know. And again, I know that birth control is not the only cause of this problem, but it plays a major role in exacerbating these mental health conditions. So I would caution you, and as a sister, as a friend, I would advise you to reconsider or do your own research. If you're not taking my word for it, go do your own research as to why we are where we are. Why are Has birth control helped us? Has it saved us? Has it really been a service or disservice? You're in your 40s. This is unprecedented, but majority of women in their 40s are now having kids. My mom had me at 17, and that was normal. But now nobody's having kids at 17 except if they live in rural areas. And I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but majority of educated women, majority of city women are not having children at 17 years of age. We're all pushing birth until we get to our late 30s to our 40s. And we discover that now we've messed up our system so much. Like there's a lot of interaction, there's a lot of association between birth control and fibroids as well. And fibroids are much more common in women that save childbearing to later stage of their life. A lot of women that start having kids at 17, 18 don't develop fibroids. I'm not saying none of them does. I'm saying majority of the time when you see fibroids, you see it in women in their 30s and 40s, or women that didn't have kids till they got to their 30s and 40s. So we're all paying the price of some of our choices. I am equally guilty. I didn't know any better. I went through pharmacy school. I don't, if they taught me about the brain changes, then I missed it. Because I don't think I learned about how birth control is not only affecting me, it's affecting my husband, it's affecting all of the other husbands and the other wives and the girlfriends and our children. I did not know that. And I found it scary, to say the least. I found it to be very scary. So please do yourself, do me, do our society a favor and reconsider your decision to jump onto birth control. I hope you found value in what I shared today. I know I did not want to start listing any companies. I try to keep it a story because I don't want it to seem like I am trying to give any health advice. My role here is to share my story, how it affected me, what it did to my body, and to caution you and hopefully impact your choices based on my own experiences. I hope to be able to share other women's stories on this platform and see how we can help each other grow, evolve, and thrive. You know, um, this channel is called Evolve, Heal, and Thrive for a reason. I had to change my mindset by learning new things and understanding when you know better, you should do better. And I learned to make a different choice. I made those other choices because I didn't know any better. And now I know better. And I'm hoping to guide you or help you to learn to do better. If you need any more advice on how to go about this, if you have any questions, if you have any recommendations, if you have anything positive, guide me on how I can learn more on how this topic can be more impactful to women in the future. Please share and comment below. I appreciate you being here and learning, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thank you.